Something has to be said about a show that was around before you were born and is still around so that you and your kids can enjoy it. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Crossing Streams. As always, I am your host, the real Gino Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about the Sesame Street 50th anniversary celebration. As I said in the intro, there just is something that has to be said about a show that has been around for as long as Sesame Street has. As many of you know, I love pretty much anything Henson, and Sesame Street, of course, falls into that. And getting to watch this anniversary celebration this last weekend, it brought me so many smiles. Look, not that this is like, it doesn't, bring in a whole new, original chapter to Sesame Street, but what this show is, like it says, it's a celebration of 50 years. So you get callbacks to characters and songs and skits and all that stuff. So we're going to talk about that today. The basic setup for it is this. Cookie Monster is trying to get to Sesame Street, and this is just the very first. He's in a cab, and you don't know who he's with. And he keeps making stops to ask for directions, but instead buys cookies. And then when they finally get there, you learn that he's in the cab with the host for the show. Now, I'll say this. You must have a winner if after the show is over and your son wants to play Sesame Street and he has to make sure that you have Joe in your playtime. And who is Joe? Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the host for the whole thing. And near the end, he says something along the lines of, this is my favorite show of all time. And him interacting with all the Muppets and everything, you can tell that this is his favorite show of all time. And I mean, he's only, I don't know, a few years younger than me. So I know how he feels, where I can't imagine being on that street, and interacting with those characters. It would be a dream come true. I mean, it's like, they're puppets, but it doesn't matter that for your childhood and for your child's childhood, and hopefully for your child's childhood, it'll be around for them as well. So he's a perfect host, and I loved what they did with him. The main premise is, the show is almost, I mean, there is an episode, there is a story going along, or going on, but it's also kind of a mini, look back, it's taking a look at what made Sesame Street great over the years. But the story that's going on is one of the things that Joseph Gordon-Levitt wants to do while he was there is get everybody together and take a picture with the Sesame Street sign. But after a bit, the Sesame Street sign disappears. And Elmo and crew are trying to keep Joseph Gordon-Levitt away from the sign because it's not there. And they don't want to tell him it's not there. They're trying to find the sign. And they're also trying to distract him with asking him, what's the different things that you love about Sesame Street? And you get to do, they go to different things. Like first there's callbacks, right? They'll say, what about, what do you love? And well, it's about the songs. So they did a mishmash of some of the most popular songs. And they asked him, just about many of the other things of Sesame Street, and it would kind of intro what they're talking about. Some of the callbacks are great because even though a lot of them are just kind of walk-bys, you see so many characters that you watched as a child. The Muppets are back, right? The different Sesame Street Muppets, even though you haven't seen them in years, there's so many callbacks. And again, some of them are just kind of, they walked across the screen, but but it's still great to see them. Another great thing, though, is that granted you can't bring back everybody because some have passed away, but they bring back a majority of the human characters, like Gordon, for example, who just left. And also, near the end, I loved that in the final song, uh, even though he retired not too long ago, Carol Spinney is standing in front, even though, he was never out of costume that I know of on the show. He was always in the Big Bird costume. Carol Spinney is standing in front of Big Bird in the one of the final songs. So just callbacks like that to characters, and that was really cool. I was a little disappointed. Again, it doesn't ruin it for me, but I was a little disappointed that there weren't more callbacks like that. I would have loved to. I mean, maybe they didn't want to be a part of it. Maybe they couldn't. I don't know. I would have loved to have seen like Frank Oz and other people that were involved. Kind of the way they brought Carol Spinney and have them out there as well. Again, I don't know why they weren't there, but they weren't. It was a little disappointing, but nothing that ruined the experience for me. There was a lot of musical acts during this, and even if it wasn't somebody I liked, I still enjoyed it, because you could still tell that Sesame Street meant something to them too. I may not be a fan of, say, Meghan Trainor, but her song was still good, and you could tell why she was doing it. You could tell they weren't there collecting just to collect a paycheck. You know what I mean? They cared about the show. They grew up with the show. You could just tell that. I love seeing like Norah Jones. Her parts were really good. And there was a few others. The best one, though, for me, and it's also because it was probably the best moment for me, was, and this is kind of a spoiler. I don't want to spoil everything of who all shows up and what songs they sing and everything. But I do have to talk about this one because it was just, the moment was perfect. I'm sitting there with Andy and we're watching it. And I said to him, I looked over, I said, I'm going to be, and I had not seen any trailers or anything. I just knew that they were having a celebration. I had seen nothing. No pictures, no nothing. I knew nothing. And I said to him, I'll be a little disappointed if Kermit doesn't show up. And he goes, why? And I said, because it was always a big deal to me when Kermit showed up on Sesame Street, because that really taught me the whole crossover appeal. Even as a kid, I always thought it was cool. It's like, oh, the Muppets and Sesame Street are together, right? As a kid, you don't really know that stuff. But that really taught me that they're part of like the same universe. And I would have been sad if he didn't, but then I'm not joking. The second I said that and explained it to him, in walks Kermit the Frog. And I'm just like, mind blown. And Andy was just, he was, I think part of him thought I knew it was coming. That's why I said it then, but I, honest to God, did not know. And it was such a beautiful moment. And I'm not gonna lie, there was multiple times, especially that time, during this show, that I started to tear up. And I almost, during that, when that one happened, I felt a tear start to roll, and it's like I didn't care, because it was so wonderful. I loved it so much. And and he talked to Joseph Gordon-Levitt for a second, and then he walks over and sings "It's Not Easy Being Green" with Elvis Costello, and that was kind of cool. They also found ways, a way or two to have Jim Henson in the show. There was a voice clip they used where you couldn't see a character's mouth moving, and it was like the baker, and it was Henson's voice. And of course they showed some old clips, so there's some Henson voices there too, and also like Frank Oz and others, because they had this whole thing where Joseph Gordon-Levitt was like, Sesame Street's always been a part of me, and I always feel like I've been a part of Sesame Street. And then they went and showed some old clips where they put Joseph Gordon-Levitt into those clips, and I thought that was pretty funny. And like one of them, the one that really got me because it was one of my favorites. They didn't do the song, but they did the Grover near far, and they had Joseph Gordon-Levitt running back and forth with him, and I thought that was hilarious. And they did that for a few other older scenes, and I thought that was cool. And man, again, while this, look, you're gonna notice some things missing in this special. There's a character here and there. It's like, I mean, me and Andy, when we play Sesame Street, we always, he still wants to start, even though I don't think they do it anymore, since the show got cut into a half hour. They used to start and end the show with Murray, and I didn't see Murray. Now, he may have been in the background. I didn't see him. I don't know, but I didn't see him. I don't think Andy saw him. So you'll notice some characters missing, but then again, for all the callbacks and everything, there's so much going on, and a character here and there will go through. I mean, just so. And one of the funniest moments, and I won't say who it is, but they kind of make a joke at the repurposing of Muppets, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt says to one Muppet, "Oh, hey, it's you," and he goes, "No, I'm this guy," and then later he'll say, "Oh, hey, it's you again," and he'll go, "No, I'm that other guy that you named before," and it was pretty funny, and I love that. A lot of the jokes were funny, especially if it was the callback jokes. Joseph Gordon-Levitt asks or says something to Big Bird, and Big Bird mentions that the first time he was here, he got I think it was like a bird seed sandwich at Loopers, not Hoopers. And that was kind of a Big Bird thing where he would call Hoopers Coopers or Loopers or whatever. And the fact that he's talking to Joseph Gordon-Levitt and he called it Loopers, I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, it's just a solid look back at one of the best shows ever, and I loved just about every second of it. I mean, I could have done without. I think the character's name is Gonger. He does a cooking segment with Cookie Monster now, which I don't mind the character, but they had this whole thing where he's floating on a balloon the entire time, and Cookie Monster's trying to get him, and it really just it turns to nothing at the end, where he's just like, "Hey, drop and I'll catch you," and that's it. I mean, there's no real payoff. So, but other than that, and Andy was a little disappointed they didn't do an Elmo's World. That being said, they did acknowledge during the song segment where they were kind of putting all the songs together, all the big songs together. They did Elmo's song in there, so Andy liked that. But really, I don't have a ton of complaints about this special. I had such a good time watching it. I've watched it twice now. I watched it right before recording this because I wanted to make sure if there was something I wanted to mention. I wanted to make sure I got everything and I wanted to mention, but I don't want to ruin it all. There's a lot of look backs to songs, to segments, to characters. There's new takes on songs. There was I believe is it Solange Knowles? I never want to mispronounce her first name, but she does a song of the loaf of bread, milk, butter, and they kind of make a whole song out of it, the grocery list. And I think it was supposed to air on like some episode earlier, but then it didn't, so they put it a part of this celebration. They do a whole production there. There were some songs I was surprised they kind of put out there more than others, but then again, maybe there was a special reason they did that. Like the Put Down the Ducky, if you want to learn the saxophone, they did the whole song, and it's like, and granted they had some of the musical artists that were a part of this whole celebration, they got in on the song as well. But I was kind of surprised that one was put above, like, say, Rubber Ducky, right? That being said, everything they did for the show, even the stuff that I didn't love, which wasn't much, even the stuff that I didn't love, like the Gonger floating on the balloon and everything, none of that ruined this show for me. I I loved it. I loved watching it with Andy. I loved watching it again just to see what else I could catch. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was a perfect host. And again, because you can tell that, I mean, okay, the scene that they show of him where I mentioned where he said, it's my favorite show of all time, you could tell he was almost ready to cry. And that means something to me because I know that the people that are involved in this are true fans of it and not just being paid to be a part of the show. And if you want to see it, I found it on YouTube first, even though it wasn't an official copy of it. You can go to PBS's website, not PBS Kids, but like the PBS website, and they had it on there. I just found that today. And I think it's going to be on sale early next month. And I know I'll be buying it for Andy and maybe even a copy for myself that I can keep forever because, again, it was just such a wonderful look at a show that I love. And if you love Sesame Street, you should definitely check it out. That's going to be all for this edition of Crossing Streams. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Gino YouTube channel. Like this video. You have anything to say about Sesame Street or the 50th anniversary celebration, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Till next time, I'm your host, the Real Gino, Gino Reynolds. And can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?